Hey, it's Bob Simon taking a break to tell you about CallRail. CallRail is a product that my firm uses, and what CallRail does is it plugs into your phone calls with your intake and with your clients to record those phone calls as real-time transcripts so you can get intelligence. And with the Attorney Share plugin, you can actually in real time be able to send a referral out through the marketplace to find the best match, all made possible with CallRail being plugged into your firm's intake with real intelligence. CallRail. Well, what are some of the frustrations that you've had with the system?
So I think it's one that's easily attributable, and I always want to caveat every experience I've had through life, great positives, things that frustrate me. So if I had to highlight some of the frustrations, um, it's maybe that abuse of power kind of component that we've seen before, and it's just that there's different leadership styles or traits that somebody thinks is effective. The Army actually has literature. They have training manuals on how to avoid toxic leadership, how to try to be an empathetic leader, how do you focus on getting people to want to follow your orders, not just getting direct follow.
Does it change from like chain of command down? Like because you were there for two different presidencies, right?
Correct.
Does that change from the top down?
So the mindset behind it for the military is always we are not concerned with who is in the seat. We are concerned with the orders that we are given, the legality to follow those orders, and executing the mission. And so the military is a nonpartisan organization. It is a nonpartisan arm of the government that is intended to ensure it meets its requirement. And the surface level main mission requirement is to defend the nation from all enemies. And so
Even the enemy within.
yes, foreign and domestic.
Well, let me ask. So we've heard stories out there that there were certain people within ICE that said, "I don't feel comfortable with this," and aren't there means for people to say, like, I feel like the orders I'm given are not appropriate? Like, what do they do under that circumstance? Because I had some people reach out to me that had that question. I didn't know how to answer that for them. Like, what do I do if I'm at ICE and I feel uncomfortable with this? Or if there's something so inappropriate, like, what do I do? I don't want to follow these orders.
Sure. And so I have to be clear that, ICE being a federal agency that is distinct from the Department of Defense, many different channels may exist, many different supervisory hierarchies that may exist. I know within the military, at least the experience that I had was when the COVID vaccine mandates came down. There certainly was a divisive kind of response to that, where some people were fully in support, other people were highly opposed. And so being the legal advisor to the commanders as they're asking me, what do I do here if I don't agree with this or I don't agree with that? And the truth, I told them, I said, look, we're at this stage in this part of the process where if somebody isn't voluntarily committing to the vaccine, and we are now asking your opinion as to whether to approve or deny their request to not get it, sir, state your opinion. I'm not here to tell you what to say. If you're looking for assistance on, you want to support their request or you want to deny their request, and you need help forming your opinion, we can talk about it. I can help give you a draft or whatever, but nothing that I'm writing is what I'm telling you to say. Nobody can dictate that. And if somebody has an issue with what you say, you're the one who bears the consequences for that. So I think there were some that said, yeah, absolutely. If I think that somebody's got a valid purpose or reason to deny, I'm going to argue for their approval. And the people above me may be of a different opinion and say, no, I think they should get it, and you're dumb for supporting it. So be it. The difference of opinion wasn't an issue. But they had to know, am I in a position to make a stand? Am I in a position to make a recommendation? And I don't think everybody always feels that way. I would assume, without knowing more of the details, that those individuals in ICE may have been more equivalent to the person who's just, look, you get told what to do and you do it, or you don't have a job. And you may not have the weight or the authority to go.
Weren't those the folks that you would end up sometimes defending is because they either took a stand or didn't want to follow orders? And yeah, so what's that like?
So specific within the military, I definitely recall on numerous occasions having discussions with people where they're, due to personal beliefs, due to their sense of entitlement, sense of whatever, they'd say like, yeah, they told me to do this, but I'm not doing it. And at least within the military, look, there may be components where you can say no. This isn't one of them. You can't say I'm not showing up for PT. You can't say that I'm not going to my doctor's appointment that I'm scheduled for, because that turns into a criminal offense. I'm not trying to maximize the punishment they can impose against you. And so I think my experience within the military can be can be distinguished from maybe what members of federal agencies who are, again, civilians employed by the federal government, from those who swear an oath, raise a right hand, and do relinquish a certain amount of rights. That's
Yes, the important distinction is that the people that are working for ICE are civilians working on behalf of the federal government.
right.
Correct. So they can, you do have rights as a civilian, right? You can not follow orders. You could have consequences to that, but you could have remedies and rights.
Right. I don't think, certainly. So I think as a civilian employed by a federal agency, your consequences for not doing your job, is, if that's how it would be described by the agency or something like that, is termination of your employment. From a military member standpoint, depending on the lens it's viewed, as far as look, if it's legitimate grounds of a unlawful order, goes outside the bounds. And
Yeah, because we saw orders where they would have, the National Guard deployed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's military,
Right.
or the Marines being deployed.
right.
Like that is a situation where they could be like, you know what, these are not. Can they say these aren't even legal orders? Like this.
So that process would take a legal advisor or a legal person reviewing what they've received, determining if the authority exists there, and then raising up the chain. Hey, we have concerns or questions about this action. And the thought process, I mean, typically decisions like that for an entire unit that's mobilized or something like that, elevated typically at least to a full bird colonel in 06 who is advising that entire unit. That's typically a position that's held to cover a unit of that size. And those are discussions happening well high up the chain. In my experience, I only got to touch on that a handful of times. So I had a client who was imposed punishment and they reduced his rank. I looked into the commanding general for his unit had pushed out certain regulations, and very specifically in plain language, it said that the commander who imposed this punishment cannot reduce somebody of that rank. They don't have the authority to. And I notified the legal advisor for the unit, and he goes, yeah, you know what? I think that was supposed to be changed because there was a change to the rules a couple of years ago. So I think that just got left in there by accident. And I said, that sounds like it was the rule that was in place when you guys did this. Okay. So there was a process that exists within the Uniform Code that's called an Article 138 complaint. And it goes to the commander that wronged you. If they imposed on a right that they weren't supposed to or anything like that, you have to notify them and request they remedy it. If they deny you, it immediately gets elevated to the commanding general above them. And so he denied it. I submitted it up. About a week and a half went by, and the legal advisor to that commanding general, full bird colonel, contacted me and said, so what we think you should do is, if you put in a request to have this removed, we think it'll go through. And if it doesn't, if you're not happy with the result, just contact me and we're going to act on this. Okay. So I put up the request. Within 24 hours, they reinstated his rank, went back, everything was cleared. So that was one of those situations where I saw his position of, maybe that rule shouldn't have been in place at the time. Maybe it should have been rescinded, but it was in place at the time. And so if you're not going to give it to me, I will go up to the next level. And it's hopefully the check and balance that's supposed to exist there.
Yeah. So that's, turning the page now. This is, mid-July or late July, we're filming this, going into private practice.
Yeah.
So you're starting at a national law firm, but in their Phoenix office with Sweet James and crew.
Yep.
Which I'm super happy about. And we talked about this for a long time because I think you have the opportunity because you've worn so many different hats, where you could do that there and learn how to do what you're great at, which is helping human beings in the courtroom.
So I was thinking about this on the way in, really kind of trying to narrow down why I wanted to go this direction. And you were a huge aspect to that, maintaining the relationship that I've had with you and understanding and following the work that you've done. I think it gave me a great avenue to see. I enjoyed obviously being in the courtroom. That was a great experience for me. But when I was prosecuting, that was at Fort Bliss, I was relegated out to the U.S. Attorney's Office to be a special assistant U.S. attorney, and I would prosecute offenses that occurred on federal land. I had discretion over my cases. I got to look at all the investigations. I got to determine if they were sufficient or insufficient and kick them back, and then decide what are we taking to trial. So that authority over, does this case have merit? Is there worthwhile in pursuing this? I loved that discretion. Being a defense attorney, I got to see the personal aspects. I got to see the context. Yes, you can say that somebody did a bad thing. Do you understand why? Do you understand the story behind this person? An example was an individual I represented who had been serving for almost as long as I've been alive. So he'd done active time. He was in the reserves, but he was an activated reservist. So he was working year-round, full-time job, and he was a recruiter. He had been recruiting so long, he'd recruited all three of his sons to the military. And he was now getting court-martialed for testing positive for marijuana on multiple occasions. He was taking marijuana because he was on his third or fourth back surgery. Wow. Fourth knee surgery. He was using a walker. Man was almost 60 years old. And
it's even way better than being on opioids.
And that was the issue, is that he'd been prescribed opioids for a long time. But as a service member, he cannot use marijuana. And look, I understand that the letter of the law is can't use marijuana. I understand that maybe there were other avenues that he could have sought to try and get alternatives or something like that. But under the veil of 30 plus years of military service, and what one of the sons that he had recruited in the military had was killed in action. He had given this country so much. And I jumped on the case. I was super excited to not just tell his story, but also try to identify where the system had failed him. And one of them was, yes, he had a number of positive tests. However, the way in which those tests were collected weren't correct. So I filed a motion. Before the judge could even rule on the motion to exclude a number of the tests, the government called me. We tend to agree. So they reduced it down from the 7 or 8 charges he had to 1. And then we were arguing over whether he gets to retire at his current rank or 1 rank below. And by the time we told the judge everything he had done, the judge goes, no rank reduction. Absolutely not.
Wow.
Yeah.
But it takes that diligence to be able to fight for someone, learn the human story. This is why it's a perfect transition for you, because it's the same thing. You learn the human story, the why, and then you can work backwards. Man, that's awesome shit. So what are another issue? Because you were down in El Paso. Did you ever have to deal with any type of immigration issue because you were so close to the border?
So being in federal court, I got to see, and I made great relationships. I was really able to connect with the people at the U.S. Attorney's Office, many of whom were former military members or current reservists. And so they deal with the immigration issue of unlawful reentries. I got to see 2 separate trials where they were trying multiple members from the same incident where they were collected and things like that. And I had actually, in law school, I had interned for a judge at that courthouse, in that federal courthouse, for a summer. So I got to see quite a number of how regularly unlawful reentry cases popped up. From the military side, I didn't touch those very much. There was brief moments where there was a correlation between involvement of military members and crimes that were being investigated by the U.S. Attorney's Office. So there was joint law enforcement investigation through the Border Patrol, Homeland Security, the FBI, and the military's Criminal Investigations Division, or CID. And then as kind of the bridge between military prosecutors and the federal prosecutors, I would be looped in to try to understand, hey, do you need assistance from us? Or is this something we need to take on? Are we dividing prosecution? Because anybody who's subject to the UCMJ can be prosecuted in a military court. It doesn't have to happen on a military installation. It doesn't have to happen just when you're on base, on duty. You're on duty 24/7. And so there were some correlations. There were some cases that popped up where a service member may have been involved or something like that, but nothing that I prosecuted.
Well, I've seen some stuff in the news where like people that serve the U.S. military were getting deported. Like, how does that happen?
So I did have one client where this was kind of the case. So, and I don't know this system perfectly, but I have a general understanding of it. So when I was stationed at Fort Leavenworth, one of the key things that occurs there is that the Army's rehearing center of excellence occurs there. So if a case is overturned on appeal and sent back to the trial court, they don't go back to the original courthouse. They don't go to the original jurisdiction or the original installation. They retry all the cases at Fort Leavenworth. So I had a client who was very early into his military service, but had served about a year, and then he was convicted of a crime that was then overturned. He came back to us, and I was working with the prosecutors just trying to understand whether there was a deal to be made on the case. And my client was not a U.S. citizen. And what is required is 100 days of honorable service. At 100 days of honorable service in the United States military, you can apply for citizenship. And it goes through your chain of command, who would then sign off and submit the proper paperwork that then processes for your citizenship.
Wait, I did not know this. So non-U.S. citizens can get into the armed forces.
Yes.
And if they do 100 days, they can actually apply for citizenship.
Correct.
Doesn't that sound like a fantastic opportunity?
It is.
Was presented? I did not know that.
And it's one that is exercised quite a bit. I served with quite a few individuals who did not have U.S. citizenship when they joined, and did that as a means, as a path towards citizenship.
Wow.
Yeah. And then that ended up being a huge fighting point over his case, which was we couldn't plead. There was no plea to be had, because if he pled guilty to any offense, his service is not honorable at that stage, and he would lose the ability to gain citizenship. Fortunately for him, the facts were on his side as far as he did not commit the crime. I fought tooth and nail because the government, the prosecutors viewed the case differently. Is it may not be something that we can prosecute in a criminal case and prosecute to beyond a reasonable doubt, but we can take it to an administrative separation where the standard of proof is a preponderance of the evidence, and we can get him kicked out. And I raised quite a bit of a stink over that case. I submitted one of those Article 138 complaints to the 2-star general at my installation I apologize, 3-star general. And when he said no to doing what I asked, I had to raise it to a 4-star level. And I threw my name quite a bit out there. We filed with the appellate court writs for habeas corpus. And ultimately he was found, even at the administrative level, not to have committed the misconduct.
Wow.
He was released honorably, paid back for the time that he served in jail. And the last time that I saw you, when we had dinner in Arizona, I had just gotten a text from him that he was boarding his flight to New York to go be with his family, and that his citizenship application was already in.
Man, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Wow, man, that's a very life-changing moment.
I have that text
How
saved.
long did you have that case?
7 months, 6, 7 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I did not know that was a path. So when we're hearing stuff in the news that people that are served are getting deported, so that likely means that they got this path to citizenship and they did some way to say you committed a crime. Now we're going to revoke. It has to be something like that.
So I could see many avenues. I could see that they were discharged and their period of service was not considered honorable. I could see it as, in the case of my client, he'd already served more than that 100 days before he had been taken to trial, and the paperwork hadn't been completed. And if that's the case, then, more concerning as to where's the bottleneck, where's the restriction. And I can't say for sure whether it's the individual who has the responsibility to push their thing ahead, or did somebody leave it on a desk?
Have you? Do you think anybody's out there just enlisting in the U.S. Army solely for the purpose of getting U.S. citizenship and just doing it for nefarious purposes?
No.
Well,
do we have systems designed to ensure that somebody isn't joining the military to trying to gain access to something that is a matter of national security? Absolutely. As I stated, I had the pleasure of serving with individuals who were, citizens of other countries or seeking citizenship in the United States, and they were always incredibly high integrity individuals, high work ethic, and a pleasure to be around. So,
man, this is such good stuff. All right, so how do people find Captain Spencer Wolfe? What's the best way to contact you now?
I'm certain that I will probably have a Sweet James email coming up soon. On my state bar profile with the state of California, I have always listed my personal email. So as much as that thing is starting to get a little bit flooded as time goes on,
Spencer C. Wolfe.
SpencerCWolfe@gmail.com is an easy way to contact me. I've been a huge fan of mentorship. That's something I've been blessed by. I talked about you. I've talked about the people that helped me get into law school and helped me navigate that avenue. And so I've always wanted to try and give back. I've tried to help mentor individuals who are interested about the JAG course. So if anybody has questions about that, they're more than welcome to reach out to me.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the quasi-civilian field. I mean, you're going to be full on private, but still in the military. It's awesome. Well, thank you for watching and listening to this episode of the Justice Team Network, the Justice Team Podcast, the Justice Team Network. But man, there's so much stuff that I learned in this episode that I'm going to deploy immediately. Thanks, brother.
Thank you.